right, everybody, welcome back. It is Monday, May 13th, 2019, 8:43 p.m., and we're taking a look at the U.S. temperatures right now, and it looks, this looks pretty nice, doesn't it? Don't let it fool you, though. We still have a lot going on, especially in the Northeast. Pennsylvania, we're getting saturated right now. New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, you name it. All the Northeast states are getting that counterclockwise spin of the system that actually began, well, not begun, but really did a number on Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, you name it. All of South Central U.S. and then Southeast U.S. and now Northeast U.S. So that is what we've been dealing with, the major flooding issues going on with the Mississippi River, the coastlines of the states in the South, and now we're going to be talking about hurricane season. As you saw in the intro, we are 19 days out from June 1st. Now, I want to make something clear if I haven't done it before. Just because this season, the official beginning of the season starts June 1st, does not mean that we won't see storms or cyclones or hurricanes before that. Now, with that said, here is a quick look back at the 2017 season, which I covered extensively on this channel. And you could see our first storm of that year happened on April 19th. Although it was not a hurricane, it was only a tropical storm. It was Tropical Storm Arlene, reached about 50 miles per hour top speed. But the biggest hurricane of that year, obviously, if you guys remember, was Maria. That was 175 miles per hour. That was a devastating hurricane. So the point being is that these storms do form before and sometimes even after the end, which is November 30th. That's more rare than seeing the storms form in April and May. Here's the 2018 look, and you can see again the first storm was before June 1st. That was Alberto, I believe, right? Yeah, that was Tropical Storm Alberto. I don't even think it turned into a hurricane, but the point being is that we had named storms before that June 1st date. So some people were asking about that, and I wanted to answer that question for them. Now, as far as last year goes, again, we had 16 total depressions, 15 storms. Now, this year, the NHC, the National Hurricane Center, is predicting 14 named storms. So that's a pretty high number to predict before the season even begins. We're still, we're in May now, so the month of April has come and gone. We had that little scare going on in Florida where there could have been a tropical depression in that area. That did not happen. That turned out to be just a bunch of storms. And now there's talking about the end of May being or having the possibility of a hurricane or a tropical storm in the same spot, the Bahamas and the southern area of Florida. So we're going to take a look into that and some of those stats, but this is the closest we can get to what we have to compare to for this coming year would be these numbers right here. Hurricanes, we had 8. Major hurricanes, we had 2. But if we go back to 17, check out the difference in the numbers, guys. Major hurricanes, we had 6. 10 total, and these 10 hurricanes were in a row. This broke a record, an all-time record. These were 10 hurricanes, 10 letter names, back to back to back to back to back 10 times. That's never happened in the history of the Atlantic hurricane season. So I felt that was important to point out to you guys. And not only that, but if you remember, we had this scene going on in 2017 where we had Katia, Irma, and Jose all at the same time visible in the South Atlantic, well, more so the South U.S., Caribbean, the Gulf. The reason Katia is in front of Irma was because Irma and Jose formed before Katia did. So it goes in the order of which they form, not the order of which they're coming towards us. That's another thing to keep in mind as we prepare for this season. And usually around this time of year is when we start getting these articles about preparing and getting ready for the hurricane season. You can see right here, with hurricane season approaching, researchers work to better predict storm intensity. Now, the reason for this article is because of Hurricane Michael. And we covered Hurricane Michael extensively last year. We covered it a couple weeks ago when they finally upgraded it from a Category 4 to a Category 5. It did reach that 160 mile per hour level when it made landfall around Mexico Beach, Florida. And we were talking about how that was the first Category 5 landfall since 1992. So that is a big deal too. If you guys remember, Katrina was not even a Cat 5 when it made landfall when it hit Houston. It actually hit Houston, came back out, and hit again, but it was still a devastating hurricane. So really quickly, I also want to talk about what's been going on in South Central U.S. This is not something you want to see, especially when the flooding we've been through, or those of you who live in Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, just went through this past week. This is not stuff we want to see, especially from AccuWeather. Parts of South Central United States hammered by severe weather and flash flooding this past week will face long-term river flooding through the rest of May and even into June. Now, we talked about this literally last night, guys. We said that we need to keep an eye on the Mississippi River, which runs over 2,000 miles right through the heart of the U.S., which is already overflowing its banks in many places. And then with this type of wording from weather stations, they're basically saying that it's going to continue through the middle of the summer at least, more than likely longer than that. And we all know June 1st is the beginning of hurricane season, so we have that to worry about on top of it. And also, now that we are getting into the hurricane talk, actually, you know what? Let's talk about this first. This is that tail end of that system that we were just speaking about that came in and flooded all parts of Texas, Louisiana, and the south central states, including Florida now. Florida's been getting hit hard all day today. Big hailstorm in North Carolina reported. I saw it on Twitter. I didn't know if I was allowed to post the actual video or not, but big hailstorm that was damaging cars and stuff like that, and in parts of North Carolina that I believe people have never seen hail in that part of North Carolina. I find that hard to believe, but that's what the article said. But you can see this little strip right here going out into the Atlantic. I believe that's what caused it. But this system is finally moving out. If I were to scroll down, you'd be able to see this counterclockwise spinning over the northeast. And this just goes to show that the tail ends of these systems are just as powerful as the storms themselves. When it comes to warmer weather, you get down into the Gulf, you never know what's going to happen down here. In fact, when we were looking, we could start right here, actually. This is the Tropical Cyclone Activity Index chart. This tells you if there's going to be a cyclone or if they're expecting a cyclone in the next 48 hours. You can check the Atlantic Ocean, and you can also check the Pacific Ocean. And as of right now, it has nothing there. But over the last couple days, according to Vent2 Sky, or not Vent2 Sky, this is Vent2 Sky. We're going to be looking at this chart a lot in the near future, guys. We use this for our hurricane tracking. We could see we have a tropical cyclone, and now this thing is downgraded. For those of you that have been following it, this was a very strong storm. It was downgraded to a Cat 1 in comparability to our hurricanes in the Atlantic. It would be a Cat 1 right now, probably even weaker as it's approaching the northern area of Australia right now. So that's a good thing for them. It's kind of out of season for this storm. A lot of stuff going on in the Indian Ocean. So what that's leading me to believe is that we're going to see a lot of action coming out of the South Pacific, when it comes to Mexico, and then when we get into the Atlantic Ocean starting June 1st, could be sooner, maybe a little after. Each season brings a different set of circumstances. It all depends on the atmospheric conditions going on, but you can see right now this rotation going on in the Upper East, right by Chesapeake Bay. That's what's causing the rain, and that was the same system that rolled over Florida and began its trip around Oklahoma and Houston, which is actually happening again. We have another system brewing around Oklahoma that's just now going to be dipping into Houston and could cause even more flooding. Hence, this AccuWeather article that I showed you, they're expecting this to continue for months now. So we just got to kind of wait and see what happens with that situation. But you see this green up here? This is the beginning of that second system we spoke about last night and I just touched on before. So it's going to swing down, possibly clipping Oklahoma. More than likely will start brewing in Texas and do the same thing that happened this past week. It's going to get down into the Gulf. It's going to gain energy and then swoop back up to the northeast, putting the coastal states in South Central America right back in the same crosshairs they were in last week also. All right, and to tie this all together, and before I lose myself here talking to you guys for 20 minutes, I want to look at tropical tidbits and just show you what we were talking about. Now, if you look at tropical tidbits now, what we're going to see down in the South Caribbean here is we're going to see something. It's not as potent as it looked a few days ago, but if we look into the future, which you don't usually want to do with hurricanes, anything after 5 days, you really don't want to put a lot of backing into, because anything can happen in 5 days when it comes to weather. I mean, weather can change in 8 hours. We all know this, especially if we study weather, and we know, especially from this channel, we've made some guesses before that were wrong. We've made some that were dead on. So we don't like doing that too much unless it's to actually try to help people in severe situations. But we can see right here, moving into the 20th, nothing yet. We could see a little bit going out in the Pacific Ocean. This is the Atlantic. This would be the Pacific. But a few days ago, they had an invest possibly coming up and then kind of forming right here underneath Florida. That has since changed. We're not seeing that now. And that's what I mean by the constant changing going on. You're going to see a lot of people, anytime they see a little flicker go on in the Atlantic Ocean, they're going to jump on and make a video about it. And then you never know. 8 hours later, it could be a whole different weather system. So I'm guilty as charged for that myself. But we're all here to just try to help each other. But you can see that there is the energy. Look at that. Here we go. This is the first one of these I've seen all season long, besides that little thing we had in Florida a few days ago that came and went, ended up being a bit of rain that came up to the northeast. But we're seeing it now. The Pacific Ocean is going to start producing these low pressure systems. You're going to start seeing them go down into the 970s, and then they're going to become hurricanes, whether they come up and die off in the Central America region, or if they come out and start coming up towards California or Mexico and California. This is what we had last year with the systems going all the way out to Hawaii. We saw a lot of those. And then we're going to see the Atlantic Ocean. So this area is getting ready for the season. It is ready. It's primed. The energy's there. I had the intensity chart brought up. I'm not sure if it's... Yeah, here we go. So the intensity chart shows you basically... unfavorable, favorable, or highly favorable areas. The green, highly unfavorable, that's most of the ocean right now because there's really not much going on. But when you look at the red, you could see why things like this are popping up. It's right in that red zone. That's where all the energy is right now. And as we move over time, you're going to start seeing this entire area covered in red. Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, Haiti, Cuba, you name it, the Bahamas. This is all going to be high energy, highly favorable areas for cyclones. And when I say cyclones, I mean hurricanes. Hurricanes, typhoons, cyclones are all the same thing. It just depends on where in the world they are. And if you're in the northern hemisphere, they spin counterclockwise. If you're in the southern hemisphere, they spin clockwise. So that's another rule of thumb you really, really want to keep an eye on and remember if you're going to be following this stuff. And once again, back to Ventu Sky, I just want to remind you guys, we're going to be looking at this chart a lot. They've done some upgrading to this chart, so it might be a little more accurate this year. In fact, that's one of the big things they're talking about is the accuracy of the instruments they use to predict these storms, and that is also because, once again, of Hurricane Michael. Hurricane Michael actually was almost a tropical storm before it made landfall, and then rapidly intensified to a Category 3, and then before we knew it, it was a Category 4, and now we know, in fact, that it was a Category 5 storm. So within a 24-hour period, Hurricane Michael went from a tropical storm to a Cat 5. That is just unbelievable when things like that happen. People don't understand what type of energy it takes for a storm of that size to happen in such little time. And this is that little spot I was talking about around May 2nd or 3rd that we were speaking about, the possible tropical depression we may have seen in Florida. But again, that came and went over 5 days. It never really broke that 10% mark. So with that said, guys, that's what I got for you for now. Just wanted to touch base on the beginning of hurricane season and the fact that we could see these storms as early as tomorrow. We may see an invest possibly being predicted to form out in the Atlantic or down in the South Central Pacific. Central America, those areas, that's where we're going to start watching now. This article says June 1st is the traditional start of Atlantic hurricane season, keyword being traditional. So, again, we see these storms in April, we've seen them in May. So, we are basically in hurricane season right now. If you were going to ask my opinion, according to the dates, we are not, but according to what's going on in the atmosphere, we certainly are. And, it's that time. So we're going to be doing a lot of talking about hurricanes, a lot of talk about all over the world when it comes to these things, because we're still in season with the Indian Ocean and the Western Pacific, and then it moves over to the Eastern Pacific and then to the Atlantic. And then finally, here are our names for this year. We have Andrea, Barry, Chantel, Dorian, Aaron, Fernand, Gabriel, Humberto, Imelda, Jerry, Karen, Lorenzo, Melissa, Nestor, Olga, Pablo, Rebecca with a K, Sebastian, that's one of Caroline's cats' names, Tanya, Van, and then we have Wendy. So we don't want to get here at all. We don't want to be anywhere near this area. But over the last 3 years, guys, it's been basically K through P have been the strongest of the storms. So Karen, Lorenzo, Melissa, Nestor, Olga, Pablo, Rebecca. I'm not saying that will happen. I'm saying that's what the trend has been lately. All right, I will have a follow-up with this video more than likely tomorrow, being that it's already 9 o'clock. So that's what I got for you guys. I hope you have a great night, and I hope this information was helpful. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.